The alarm system screamed through the corridors of Titan Station for the third time that week. Dr. Amy Reed pulled off her safety gloves and sighed deeply. Another malfunction in the recycling bay meant another long night of repairs. The station's automated systems had been failing more often lately, and the small crew of 12 researchers was struggling to keep everything running. Amy walked down the narrow metal hallway toward the recycling section. Her boots made soft clicking sounds on the floor panels. She had been working on this remote research station for 2 years now, studying alien plant samples and mineral compositions from nearby planets. The work was lonely but important. Every discovery they made helped humanity understand more about life in the galaxy. When she reached the recycling bay, Amy stopped and stared. The heavy metal door had been torn apart from the inside. Twisted pieces of steel hung at strange angles, and the electronic lock was completely destroyed. But this was not normal damage from a malfunction. The metal edges looked like they had been eaten away, not broken or cut. Amy grabbed her scanner from her belt and stepped carefully through the destroyed doorway. The recycling bay was a mess. Containers were scattered everywhere, and most of them were empty. The machines that normally sorted waste materials were badly damaged. Some had large holes in their metal sides, while others were missing entire sections. Then she heard it. A soft whimpering sound came from behind the largest sorting machine. Amy moved slowly toward the noise, her scanner ready. She had studied many alien life forms, but she had never encountered anything on the station itself. The nearest planet with known life was 3 light-years away. Behind the machine, Amy found something that made her heart race. A small creature about the size of a house cat was curled up in a ball. Its skin looked like dark metal with blue streaks running through it. 4 legs ended in sharp claws, and a long tail wrapped around its body. The creature's eyes were closed, but Amy could see it breathing heavily. The scanner in Amy's hand beeped quietly as it analyzed the creature. The readings were unlike anything in the station's database. The creature's body temperature was much higher than any known life form, and its cellular structure was completely unique. Most surprising of all, the scanner detected traces of various metals in the creature's stomach. Amy knelt down slowly, trying not to frighten the small being. As she got closer, she could see that it was very young and very hungry. Its ribs showed through its metallic skin, and its breathing was weak. The creature had clearly been eating the recycling materials to survive, but it was not getting proper nutrition. The creature's eyes opened suddenly, and Amy gasped. They were bright amber and filled with intelligence. This was not just an animal acting on instinct. The creature looked directly at Amy and made a soft chirping sound, almost like it was trying to communicate. Amy reached into her pocket and pulled out a nutrition bar. She broke off a small piece and held it out to the creature. It sniffed the food but pushed it away with its nose. Instead, the creature looked at Amy's metal scanner with obvious interest. Understanding immediately, Amy detached the metal casing from her scanner and offered it to the creature. Without hesitation, the small being bit into the metal and began eating it. Amy watched in amazement as the creature's teeth seemed to dissolve the metal rather than chewing it. Within minutes, the entire casing was gone. The creature looked much better after eating. Its breathing became stronger, and it sat up to look at Amy more carefully. It made the chirping sound again, and Amy realized it was trying to thank her. Over. The next hour, Amy fed the creature various metal objects from around the recycling bay. Each time it ate eagerly and seemed to grow a little stronger. Amy began to understand that this creature did not eat organic food like most life forms. Instead, it needed metals and other materials to survive. Amy knew she had to report the discovery to Station Commander Davis, but something held her back. The creature was clearly intelligent and peaceful. If she reported it officially, the commander would probably want to capture it for study or contact the military. Amy had seen how the government treated unusual alien life forms, and she did not want that fate for this small, helpless creature. Instead, Amy decided to keep the discovery secret for now. She helped the creature move to a safer hiding place in an unused storage room. She brought it various metals and materials to eat, carefully choosing items that would not be missed from the station's inventory. Over the following days, Amy spent every free moment with the creature. She began calling it Ember because of the way its metallic skin seemed to glow when it was well fed and healthy. Ember was clearly very intelligent. It learned quickly which materials made it feel better and which ones were not as nutritious. It also began to recognize Amy's voice and would make happy chirping sounds when she arrived. Amy started keeping detailed notes about Ember's behavior and dietary needs. She discovered that Ember could eat almost any material, but it preferred certain types of metals and synthetic compounds. The creature seemed to be able to break down complex materials at a molecular level, extracting specific nutrients that it needed for growth. Most importantly, Amy realized that Ember was trying to communicate with her. The creature made different sounds for different needs and emotions. It had one sound for hunger, another for contentment, and a third for curiosity. Amy began to learn this basic language and started responding with her own sounds. After a week of secret visits, Ember had grown noticeably larger and stronger. Its metallic skin had developed a healthier shine, and its movements were more energetic. But Amy also noticed that other crew members were starting to ask questions about the missing materials and the damaged recycling equipment. Station Commander Davis called a meeting to discuss the equipment failures and supply shortages that had been reported. Amy sat quietly as her colleagues suggested various explanations for the problems. Nobody suspected the truth, but Amy knew it was only a matter of time before someone discovered Ember's hiding place. That night, as Amy brought Ember its usual meal of metal scraps, she made a difficult decision. She could not keep the creature secret much longer, and she could not let it be treated as just another laboratory specimen. Ember was intelligent and deserving of respect and protection. Amy decided that she would find a way to help Ember, even if it meant risking her career and safety. As she watched Ember carefully eat the materials she had brought, Amy began planning how to protect this remarkable creature from those who would not understand its true nature. 3 weeks had passed since Amy first found Ember, and everything had changed. The small creature had grown to the size of a large dog, its metallic scales now shimmering with health and vitality. But more importantly, Ember had begun to show abilities that amazed and frightened Amy in equal measure. Amy discovered Ember's true capabilities quite by accident. She had brought a damaged water filter to the storage room, planning to dispose of it later. The filter was full of toxic chemicals that had made the station's water supply dangerous to drink. Amy set it down while she organized Ember's regular meal of metal fragments. To her surprise, Ember ignored the clean metals and went straight for the contaminated filter. Within minutes, the creature had consumed the entire device, including all the toxic waste inside it. Amy expected Ember to become sick, but instead the creature seemed more energetic than ever. Amy ran tests on Ember's waste products and made an incredible discovery. The toxic chemicals were completely gone. Somehow Ember's digestive system had broken down the dangerous materials and converted them into harmless compounds. The creature was not just eating garbage, it was cleaning and purifying everything it consumed. This discovery led Amy to experiment further. She began bringing Ember more challenging materials, always staying nearby to monitor its health. Ember consumed radioactive waste from the station's power core, dangerous acids from the laboratory, and even electronic components filled with toxic metals. In every case, the output was clean and safe. But Ember's growth brought new challenges. The creature was becoming too large to hide in the small storage room, and it needed more food to maintain its increased size. Amy found herself taking bigger risks to keep Ember fed and hidden. During this time, Amy also noticed that Ember's vocalizations were becoming more complex. The simple chirps had evolved into elaborate patterns of sound that seemed almost musical. Amy realized that Ember was trying to tell her something important, but she could not understand the meaning. The breakthrough came when Amy brought her translation computer to one of their meetings. The device was designed to analyze alien languages and find patterns of meaning. When Amy played recordings of Ember's sounds through the computer, the results shocked her. Ember was not making random noises. The creature was speaking a sophisticated language with grammar, vocabulary, and complex concepts. The computer could only translate small portions, but it was enough for Amy to understand that Ember had been trying to tell her its story. Through broken translations and careful observation, Amy learned that Ember belonged to a species called the Draknari. They were an ancient race of environmental engineers who had traveled the galaxy for thousands of years, cleaning polluted worlds and restoring damaged ecosystems. The Draknari had the ability to consume any material and transform it into something beneficial for life. But according to Ember's fragmented communications, the Draknari were gone. Something called the Hegemony Alliance had destroyed their colony ships and hunted them to extinction. Ember was possibly the last of its kind, surviving only because it had been too young to be seen as a threat when its people were killed. Amy felt tears in her eyes as she realized the magnitude of what she had found. Ember was not just an unusual, alien creature. It was the last survivor of a genocide. The small being had been alone and terrified, eating garbage on a remote space station because it had nowhere else to go. The revelation changed everything for Amy. She no longer saw her actions as simply helping a lost animal. She was protecting a refugee from a species that had been murdered for trying to heal the galaxy. The responsibility felt overwhelming, but Amy knew she could not abandon Ember now. However, keeping Ember's secret was becoming impossible. Station. Commander Davis had noticed the missing materials and damaged equipment. He ordered security sweeps of all storage areas, looking for signs of sabotage or equipment failure. Amy knew it was only a matter of time before someone found Ember's hiding place. Amy's fears were realized when Technical Officer Brown discovered unusual readings in the storage section. He reported strange heat signatures and chemical traces that did not match any known station equipment. Commander Davis ordered a full investigation, and Amy knew she had to act quickly. That night, Amy went to Ember with a heavy heart. She had to tell the creature that their time together was ending. Using the translation computer and simple gestures, Amy tried to explain that other humans were looking for Ember and that they might not be as understanding as she was. Ember's response surprised her. Instead of fear or anger, the creature seemed to understand completely. It made sounds that the computer translated as gratitude and friendship. Ember knew that Amy had risked everything to help it, and it was not afraid of what might come next. 3. Next morning, Commander Davis arrived with 2 security officers to search the storage areas. Amy met them at the entrance to Ember's hiding place, knowing there was no way to avoid the confrontation any longer. When they opened the storage room door, all 3 men stepped back in shock. Ember sat calmly in the center of the room, no longer trying to hide. The creature had grown to the size of a small horse, its metallic scales reflecting the light like liquid metal. Despite its impressive size, Ember remained perfectly still and made no threatening movements. Commander Davis reached for his communication device, probably to call for military backup, but Amy stepped between him and the door. "Wait," she said, firmly. "Let me explain what this creature really is. It's not dangerous. It's the last survivor of a species that was trying to help the galaxy, and it needs our protection." Commander Davis stared at Amy with disbelief. "Dr. Reed, you have been hiding an unknown alien life form on this station for weeks. Do you realize how dangerous and irresponsible that is?" Amy looked back at Ember, who was watching the confrontation, with intelligent eyes. "I realized that I found something precious and rare, and I did what I thought was right to protect it. This creature, whose name is Ember, has abilities that could help solve some of humanity's biggest environmental problems. But more than that, it's intelligent and peaceful and deserves to be treated with respect, not as a laboratory specimen." The security officers raised their weapons, but Commander Davis held up a hand to stop them. He studied Ember carefully, noting the creature's calm behavior and obvious intelligence. "Even if what you say is true, Dr. Reed, this is not a decision you should have made alone. This creature represents a first contact situation with major implications for humanity. I have to report this to Fleet Command immediately." Amy felt her heart sink as she realized what that meant. Fleet Command would send military researchers to take Ember away. They would study the creature like a weapon instead of treating it like the intelligent being it was. Everything Amy had worked to protect would be lost. The transmission from Fleet Command came 3 days after Commander Davis reported Ember's presence on Titan Station. Amy watched helplessly as military ships approached their small research outpost. knowing they would take Ember away for weapon, research and experimentation. But the ships that arrived were not from Human Fleet Command. The sleek black vessels bore the insignia of the Hegemony Alliance, the same organization that Ember claimed had destroyed its people. Amy felt cold fear grip her heart as she realized that someone had betrayed Ember's location to its greatest enemies. Commander Davis received the transmission from the lead Hegemony ship with obvious confusion. "This is Admiral Pierce of the Hegemony Third Fleet. We are here to collect a dangerous alien specimen that was reported at your station. Prepare to hand over the creature immediately." Amy ran to the storage room where Ember was being held under guard. The creature seemed to sense the approaching danger, its metallic scales darkening with stress and fear. When Amy entered the room, Ember made urgent sounds that the translation computer interpreted as warnings about the destroyers and death ships. "I know, Ember," Amy whispered, kneeling beside the creature. "I'm going to get you out of here. I promise." Amy had been planning an escape route for days, knowing this moment would come. The station's maintenance shafts connected to the docking bay where several small research vessels were kept. If she could get Ember to one of those ships, they might be able to escape before the Hegemony forces boarded the station. But as Amy prepared to put her plan into action, Commander Davis burst into the storage room with his security officers. His face was pale with worry and anger. "Dr. Reed, I don't know what kind of creature you found, but the Hegemony Alliance is claiming it's a weapon of mass destruction. They're demanding we hand it over immediately, and they're threatening to destroy this station if we refuse." Amy stood protectively in front of Ember. "They're lying, Commander. Ember isn't a weapon. The Hegemony destroyed Ember's entire species because they were afraid of what the Draknari could do to help other worlds. They can't let even one survivor live because it threatens their control over the galaxy." "That's impossible, Commander," Davis replied. "The Hegemony Alliance maintains peace and stability throughout this sector. They wouldn't commit genocide against a peaceful species." Ember suddenly made a series of complex harmonic sounds that filled the room with haunting music. The translation computer worked frantically to process the communication, and slowly words began to appear on Amy's screen. Homeworld, burning skies, children crying, ships falling, no mercy, no survivors, only hunger and darkness, only death and silence, only me left. The translated words hung in the air like an accusation. Commander Davis stared at the screen in shock, beginning to understand the horrible truth about what Amy had discovered. Amy felt tears running down her face as she listened to Ember's story of loss and survival. The Draknari were environmental engineers, Commander. They traveled from world to world, cleaning up pollution and toxicity that other species had created. They could consume any harmful material and transform it into something beneficial for life. "But why would the Hegemony see that as a threat?" Commander Davis asked quietly. Amy helped Ember stand up, noting how the creature's size and strength had continued to grow over the past few days. "Because the Hegemony's power is based on controlling resources and maintaining scarcity. If worlds could be cleaned and restored naturally, they wouldn't need the Hegemony's expensive environmental technology. The Draknari represented a threat to their entire economic system." Before Commander Davis could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. The Hegemony ships were moving into attack position, preparing to board Titan Station by force. Amy made her decision. She activated the emergency protocols that would lock down all sections of the station, buying them a few precious minutes. Then she turned to Ember and spoke urgently. "Can you break through the station's hull without causing a catastrophic decompression? We need to get to the escape pods, but the corridors will be full of Hegemony troops in minutes." Ember seemed to understand immediately. The creature moved to the outer wall of the storage room and placed its claws against the metal plating. Amy watched in amazement as Ember's claws began to glow with intense heat. The metal simply melted away, leaving a perfectly smooth opening to the outside. But instead of the vacuum of space that Amy expected, there was only a thin barrier of some kind of organic material. Ember had somehow created an emergency seal that would allow them to pass through while maintaining the station's atmosphere. Amy gathered her research data and the translation computer, while Commander Davis and his men stared in disbelief at Ember's abilities. The creature was not just eating and transforming materials. It was engineering solutions with precision and intelligence that surpassed human technology. "Come with us, Commander," Amy urged. "Once you see what Ember can really do, you'll understand why the hegemony is so afraid." Commander Davis hesitated for only a moment before nodding. He ordered his security officers to accompany them, and the small group followed Ember through the opening in the station's hull. They emerged onto the outer surface of Titan Station, where Ember had somehow created a breathable environment bubble around them. Amy could see the hegemony ships approaching, their weapon systems charging for an attack. Ember moved quickly across the station's surface toward the docking bay, creating a path of transformed metal that was easier to walk on. Amy realized that the creature was not just helping them escape, it was improving everything it touched. When they reached the docking bay, Amy was amazed to see what Ember had accomplished. The creature had quietly been transforming parts of the station's infrastructure, cleaning toxic materials from the air recycling system, and improving the efficiency of the power generators. Ember had been trying to help the entire station, not just survive on it. As they boarded one of the research vessels, Amy finally understood the full scope of what she had discovered. Ember was not just the last survivor of an extinct species. It was a living example of what the galaxy could become if cooperation and environmental healing replaced exploitation and control. The hegemony ships opened fire on Titan Station as Amy's small vessel launched from the docking bay. But Ember was not finished showing its abilities. The creature moved to the ship's hull and began transforming its surface, making it harder for enemy sensors to detect and more resistant to weapon fire. As they escaped into hyperspace, Amy watched Titan Station explode behind them. The hegemony had destroyed the research facility rather than allow Ember to continue existing. But they were too late. Amy and Ember were free, and now she understood her true mission. Somewhere in the galaxy, there were other Dreknari survivors waiting to be found. Ember had shown her images through its harmonic communication, pictures of hidden colonies and secret refugees where its people might still be alive. The hegemony thought they had committed the perfect genocide, but they were wrong. Amy looked at Ember, who was calmly working to improve their small ship's life support systems. The creature had trusted her completely, and now she would do everything in her power to help restore the Dreknari to their rightful place in the galaxy. The escape was only the beginning. Amy knew that the hegemony would hunt them across every star system, but she also knew that humanity had allies they had never imagined. With Ember's help, they could expose the truth about the hegemony's crimes and work to heal the damage that had been done to countless worlds. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, Amy began composing a message to the Free Worlds Coalition, the rebel alliance that opposed hegemony control. She had a story to tell them about genocide and hope, about environmental healing and the power of cooperation between species. Most importantly, she had proof that the galaxy's problems were not inevitable. With the right approach and the right allies, even the most damaged worlds could be restored to health and beauty. Ember represented hope for a future where life could flourish throughout the stars. Amy's message to the Free Worlds Coalition reached Captain Rex Harbor, while his ship Defiance was hiding in the asteroid belt of the Kepler system. Rex had been fighting the Hegemony Alliance for 10 years, but he had never heard a story like the one Dr. Reed was telling. The Coalition maintained secret communication networks throughout the galaxy, connecting rebel cells and independent worlds that refused to submit to hegemony control. When Amy's message spread through these channels, it caused an immediate sensation. A living survivor of a species that the hegemony had supposedly destroyed was proof of their greatest crime. Rex contacted Amy within hours of receiving her transmission. His weathered face appeared on her ship's communication screen, showing the scars and determination of a man who had lost everything to the hegemony's expansion. Dr. Reed, this is Captain Harbor of the Coalition ship Defiance. If what you're saying is true, you and your friend are in more danger than you realize. The hegemony has put a massive bounty on both of your heads, and they're hunting you with everything they have. Amy looked at Ember, who had grown even larger during their week of travel. The creature now filled most of their small ship's cargo hold, but it continued to improve every system it touched. Their life support was running more efficiently than ever, and Ember had somehow enhanced their hyperspace drive to travel faster while using less fuel. Captain Harbor, Ember has been showing me images of other places where its people might still be alive. They're hidden on worlds that have become too polluted for normal life, but I think we can save them if we act quickly. Rex studied the data that Amy transmitted to his ship. The locations were scattered across hegemony space, on worlds that had been strip-mined and abandoned decades ago. Most people assumed those planets were dead, but according to Ember's genetic memories, Draknari eggs could survive in extremely harsh conditions for many years. This is going to be the most dangerous rescue mission in Coalition history, Rex said grimly. But if we can prove that the hegemony committed genocide and that there are still Draknari survivors, we might be able to turn the entire galaxy against them. Within days, Rex had assembled a small fleet of Coalition ships willing to join the rescue mission. The volunteers came from dozens of different worlds and species, all united by their hatred of hegemony oppression. But Amy quickly realized that most of them saw Ember as a weapon rather than a being deserving of respect and protection. Amy insisted on boarding the Defiance with Ember so she could personally oversee the rescue operations. When Ember first emerged from Amy's small ship, the Coalition crew members stepped back in fear and amazement. The creature had continued growing and now stood as tall as a human, its metallic scales shimmering with health and power. But Ember's behavior immediately won over even the most skeptical crew members. Instead of acting aggressively, the creature began examining the ship's systems and quietly making improvements. Within hours, the Defiance was running better than it had in years. Ember had cleaned toxins from the air recyclers, improved the efficiency of the power generators, and even enhanced the weapon systems without being asked. Captain Harbor watched in amazement as Ember worked. I've never seen anything like this. It's not just fixing our problems, it's making everything better than it was originally designed to be. Amy smiled as she watched Ember carefully examine a damaged control panel. That's what the Draknari do, Captain. They don't just survive in harsh environments, they improve everything around them. The hegemony destroyed them because they were afraid of losing control over damaged worlds that could be healed. The first rescue mission took them to a planet called Wasteland Prime, a former mining world that had been abandoned after its atmosphere became too toxic for most life forms. According to Ember's memories, 3 Draknari eggs had been hidden in the deepest mine shafts 50 years ago. When they landed on the planet's surface, Amy was shocked by the devastation. The sky was a sickly yellow color, and the ground was covered with industrial waste and toxic chemicals. No plants grew anywhere, and the air was barely breathable even with protective suits. But Ember showed no fear of the harsh environment. The creature walked confidently across the poisoned landscape, its body absorbing and neutralizing toxins with every step. Amy watched in amazement as small patches of clean soil appeared wherever Ember had walked, and the air around them became noticeably cleaner. They found the first Draknari egg exactly where Ember's memories indicated. It was buried deep underground, surrounded by the most toxic waste on the planet. The egg was dark and appeared to be dormant, but Ember made excited sounds when it sensed the life force still hidden inside. Ember began the awakening process by consuming the toxic materials. Around the egg, Amy watched through her scanner as the creature's digestive system broke down deadly chemicals and converted them into nutrients that the dormant Draknari could use. Slowly, the egg began to glow with its own inner light. Within hours, the first new Draknari in 50 years emerged from its shell. The hatchling was smaller than Ember had been when Amy first found it, but it immediately began making the same harmonic sounds that Amy had learned to recognize as communication. The rescue of the second and third eggs went even more smoothly. Ember had learned how to awaken its people more efficiently, and the hatchlings emerged healthy and strong. More importantly, each new Draknari immediately began helping to clean the environment around them. By the time the Coalition fleet left Wasteland Prime, significant areas of the planet's surface had been restored to health. Plants were beginning to grow in the cleaned soil, and the toxic atmosphere was slowly becoming breathable. The 3 young Draknari had accomplished more environmental healing in a few days than human technology could have achieved in decades. Word of the successful rescue spread quickly through the coalition networks. More volunteers joined the fleet, and several independent worlds offered support and supplies. But the hegemony response was swift and brutal. They began systematically destroying any planet where Draknari eggs might be hidden, preferring to commit genocide again rather than allow the species to recover. Amy felt sick as she watched news reports of hegemony fleets obliterating entire worlds. Billions of innocent people were dying to prevent the rescue of a few dozen Draknari survivors. But she also noticed something else in the reports that gave her hope. Human colonies throughout the galaxy were beginning to rebel against the hegemony. The story of Amy and Ember had inspired people to stand up for what was right, even when it meant risking their lives. Entire planets were declaring independence rather than participate in another genocide. Amy realized that she and Ember had started something much larger than a simple rescue mission. They had given the galaxy proof that the hegemony's power was based on lies and fear. The Draknari represented hope for a better future, and people everywhere were willing to fight to protect that hope. Over the next several months, the coalition fleet grew into a massive armada as more worlds joined the rebellion. They successfully rescued 47 Draknari from 12 different planets, each rescue operation resulting in significant environmental improvements to the worlds they visited. But Amy knew the hegemony would not give up easily. Intelligence reports indicated they were massing the largest military fleet in galactic history for a final assault on the coalition forces. The ultimate battle was coming, and the fate of both the Draknari and human freedom hung in the balance. The final battle began above the planet New Terra, where the largest group of rescued Draknari had gathered with their human companions. Amy stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching as hundreds of hegemony warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect attack formation. Their fleet was massive, easily outnumbering the coalition forces by 10-1. Admiral Pierce's voice crackled across all communication channels with his final ultimatum. Surrender the alien creatures immediately, or we will destroy every ship in your fleet. You have 1 hour to comply. Captain Harbour looked at Amy with determination in his eyes. What do you think, Doc? Can your friends help us win this fight? Amy placed her hand on Ember's massive head as the creature stood beside her on the bridge. Over the past year, Ember had grown to the size of a small building, but its gentle nature had never changed. The other rescued Draknari had bonded with human partners throughout the coalition fleet, creating teams that worked together with perfect understanding. I don't think we need to win this fight in the traditional way, Captain. Ember has been showing me something about Draknari abilities that we never understood before. Amy had spent months studying the relationship between humans and Draknari, and she had made discoveries that amazed even her. The two species seemed perfectly designed to work together. Humans provided the emotional guidance and creative thinking that helped Draknari focus their transformative abilities, while Draknari provided the power to actually heal and improve everything around them. More importantly, Amy had learned that Draknari could do much more than simply consume and transform materials. When working with human partners, they could selectively target specific types of matter while leaving other things completely untouched. This precision made them incredibly powerful, but also safe to work with. As the hour deadline approached, Amy made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Instead of preparing for battle, she opened communication channels to every ship in both fleets. This is Dr. Amy Reed speaking to all coalition and hegemony forces. I want to show you what cooperation between humans and Draknari can really accomplish. What you're about to see will prove that war and destruction are no longer necessary. Amy gave Ember a gentle touch, and the creature responded with a complex harmonic song that was transmitted to every Draknari throughout the coalition fleet. The response was immediate and coordinated. All 47 rescued Draknari began working together in perfect harmony with their human partners. Amy watched her scanner in amazement as the creatures focused their abilities on the hegemony fleet's most vulnerable systems. The Draknari did not attack the ships directly. Instead, they began consuming the toxic fuel that powered the hegemony vessels, transforming it into clean energy that was harmless to biological life forms. Within minutes, hundreds of warships found their weapon systems shutting down as their dangerous fuel supplies were converted into breathable atmosphere. But the Dreknari were not finished. Working with their human companions, they began transforming the hegemony ships themselves. Weapons were converted into medical equipment, armor plating became materials for building homes, and communication systems were improved to carry messages of peace instead of threats of war. Amy watched Admiral Pierce's flagship with particular interest. The massive dreadnought was being systematically transformed from a weapon of destruction into a mobile environmental processing facility. The ship's crew could only watch helplessly as their instruments showed breathable air, replacing toxic chemicals throughout their vessel. The transformation process spread from ship to ship as the Dreknari network expanded their influence across the entire hegemony fleet. Within hours, what had been the largest military armada in galactic history had become a collection of environmental restoration vessels. But the most important change was happening on New Terra itself. The planet had been badly damaged by industrial development, but the concentrated efforts of dozens of Dreknari working with their human partners was healing centuries of environmental destruction in a matter of hours. Amy watched through her ship's sensors as vast areas of dead land came back to life. Poisoned rivers became clean and clear. Toxic air was converted to breathable atmosphere, and barren soil became fertile ground for new plant growth. The planet was literally being reborn before their eyes. Admiral Pierce tried desperately to maintain control of his forces, but his communications were being transformed by the Dreknari into messages of cooperation and healing. Instead of orders to attack, his ships received instructions on how to help with the environmental restoration work. Many hegemony crew members began to understand what was really happening. They had been told that the Dreknari were dangerous weapons, but they could see with their own eyes that these creatures were healers and restorers. The lies that the hegemony had used to maintain power were being exposed by direct demonstration. Amy received a communication request from Admiral Pierce himself. When she accepted the call, she saw a man whose entire worldview had been shattered. In a single day, Dr. Reed, what have you done to my fleet? Our weapons are gone, our fuel is converted to atmosphere, and my crew is reporting that their ships are running better than they ever have before. Amy smiled as she watched Ember gently examining a damaged control panel on their own bridge. Admiral, your fleet has been given a chance to do something meaningful instead of just causing destruction. The Dreknari have shown you what cooperation and healing can accomplish. But our entire military structure is based on maintaining control through superior firepower. Without weapons, how can we maintain order in the galaxy? Amy looked around the bridge at the mixed crew of humans and Dreknari, who had worked together to achieve something impossible. Maybe the galaxy doesn't need to be controlled, Admiral. Maybe it needs to be healed. Over the following weeks, the transformation continued to spread. Hegemony colonies throughout the galaxy began reporting unprecedented improvements in their environmental conditions. Polluted worlds became clean, toxic atmospheres became breathable, and damaged ecosystems were restored to health. Many humans who had served the hegemony out of fear or necessity began to understand that there was a better way to live. They formed partnerships with Dreknari survivors and began working to heal the damage that decades of industrial exploitation had caused. Amy established the first official human Dreknari colony on New Terra, where she and Ember worked together to create a model for how the two species could build a better future. The planet became a center of learning where people from throughout the galaxy could come to understand the principles of environmental restoration and interspecies cooperation. Ember, now fully grown and magnificent in its metallic beauty, spent its days working with Amy to transform New Terra into a paradise. The creature had never lost its gentle nature or its gratitude to the human woman who had saved its life. Together, they proved that friendship and understanding between different species could literally reshape worlds. The Hegemony Alliance collapsed within a year, not through military defeat, but through the simple demonstration that their way of doing things was no longer necessary. When people could see functioning examples of cooperation and environmental healing, they no longer accepted explanations based on fear and scarcity. Amy often stood on the balcony of her research facility, watching as Ember and its offspring worked with human partners to continue improving their world. The sky was clean and blue, the rivers ran clear, and forests grew where there had once been industrial waste. The galaxy still faced many challenges, but Amy knew that humans and Draknari, working together, could overcome any obstacle. They had proven that compassion and cooperation were more powerful than weapons and control. Most importantly, they had shown that every species deserved respect and protection, regardless of how different they might seem. The bond between Amy and Ember had saved not just the Draknari from extinction, but had given the entire galaxy hope for a better future where all life could flourish among the stars.